So good evening, everybody. My name is Deb Johnson. I am the director here at Community Mental Health and work directly with Mark as part of the community relations team. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming today as we celebrate the life of our friend and coworker, Mark Hutchinson. I especially would like to welcome Mark's family and offer my sincere condolences. Mark's son Tyler and fiance are sitting in the front row with Pete. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mixed up. We got fiance back there. We got, Tyler and his wife, Katerina. I love her name. And Mia, Pete, Jordan, and Caitlin are back there. And if people haven't had a chance to talk to them, because maybe if you didn't know who they are, they're up here, and they'll be here after the program ends. So as we started to plan for this, we asked our employees to share a favorite memory of Mark so that we could compile them into a book for his family. For those who haven't had a chance to send something in but would like to share a memory, if you haven't seen them, we have cards available on that back table that can be filled out anytime before you leave and put into the card holder box back there. We've also taken a collection to give to Mark's son Tyler and wife, and if you would like to make a donation, there's envelopes back there as well with instructions, and just put it in the same box as the memory box because we don't have two boxes. Yesterday, first of all, one thing you should all know is that Mark wrote almost everything I said. So I had to do this myself. I had a little bit of help from one of my CRT staff, Karen, but then I modified it myself. But one of the things I did is I sent an email asking for any employees that knew Mark if they would like to describe him, but just use one word. And I said, I know that's a hard job, but please do that and send it to me, and I was going to prepare my remarks. And it was no surprise to me that the vast majority of staff, which is 20 plus staff, used the word kind, just the word kind, or some variation. And one that came in late today that I wanted to include was benevolence, because I know that somebody put a lot of thought into coming up with that word. And benevolence, and Mark loved big words, so people who know him. So the quality of being well-meaning and kindness, that's what that means. Followed by other words such as thoughtful, dedicated, gentle, funny, respectful, encouraging, supportive, smart, compassionate, diverse. Somebody said quirky, and the list goes on. Actually, we made a word cloud that was in that PowerPoint. You might have seen it. And all in all, over 75 staff responded. There might even be more. I haven't checked my email this afternoon, so there could be more. And that is less than 24 hours to that request, which I think that's not only a record for staff reading my email that fast and responding, but it's also a true testament to the impact that Mark made on so many of his coworkers. One person, I really liked this comment, responded with, their single word was Mark, just Mark, in quotes, followed by, he put the mark in remarkable. And I like that too. It really was truly an honor to work with Mark for many years at CMH. He was a talented writer, a kind soul, sarcastically funny, easily the smartest person in the room, and I know that Mark would also want us to describe him as devastatingly handsome. Mark started at CMH in 2010 as a writing instructor, and from there he moved on to the community relations team, where he was a much-loved member of our team and the only male in the group. He was a fierce advocate for the people that he worked with in his writing class, helping them improve their writing and supporting their goals. He was always so proud of them. It was only a small part of his job, but one of the parts that he liked most about working here at CMH. His love for the people we serve was also evident in his work organizing the annual celebration of recovery, the NAMI walks, the CMH players, and sharing people's recovery stories in our annual report, and also the Walk a Mile rally in Lansing. I wasn't sure if I should say this next thing because I don't know if it's politically correct, but Mark also served in a union leadership different union leadership positions for a number of years, and as the union chair for just over a year, about a year and a half, I think it was. He was definitely one of my favorite in that role. He was always the voice of reason. He never overreacted, and he was always respectful. In fact, when I learned, he didn't tell me he wasn't running again. And when I learned of it, I went to his desk and I said, "Did you forget to tell me something?" And he said, "What?" And then I told him. And then he was like, "Yeah, well, Jennifer will do a good job. And Jennifer, if you're here, you are doing a good job." There she is, okay? Anyways, Mark was on multiple Teams of the Month. Teams of the Month are people that are nominated for doing exceptional things. He was on many of them over the years. He was also selected as the Employee of the Month a couple years ago, and he was also the recipient of the Hold the Hope Award. And that's a really special award. That award is given to somebody to recognize them for holding the hope for others when they're not able to hold the hope for themselves. He really made an impact on people that he served, and that's why he was given that. I'm almost done. I almost made it. Mark was my go-to writer. I told you that, for anything and everything from public service announcements to emails to legislative testimony and everything in between. His contributions to community mental health and the lives he has touched will forever live in our hearts. He will be truly missed. And now I would like to invite Mike McCartan, our former director and longtime friend of Mark's, to come up and say a few words. Mike?
Thank you. As was mentioned, my name is Mike McCartan, and I would also like to extend my condolences to the family, to the friends, and to the many co-workers who are here today. It's a real privilege to participate in the celebration of life of Mark Hutchinson. I worked with Mark when he first started here while I was at CMH, and later we worked together when he became manager of the theater troupe. I considered him a colleague, a friend, and fellow raconteur. That means bullshitter. As was mentioned, Mark liked big words. He knew a lot of them, and he was not afraid to use them. I grew up at CMH in many ways and have considered it my family. Losing someone in the family hurts just a little bit more. Mark was the consummate gentleman. He was kind, considerate, unassuming, humble, and fair. I recall when he first came to the agency, as I said, I was the director. And just like now, then I was expected to do an article for the Times Herald once a month on various mental health related activities. It was only once a month, but to me, it felt like it was another final paper due at a deadline every month. So I went to Mark, because I knew Mark had a background and he was a teacher. And I told him about this article that I had written, that I was working on. And I asked him if he could review it and provide me with some comments at his leisure. Well, probably within an hour, I got back a paper. It was filled with red punctuation and suggested alternative words. He basically rewrote it for me. From then on, Mark did just about all of the writing that I took some responsibility from. And he never, ever complained about the fact that he was not credited in the byline. In fact, he wouldn't have wanted to be. And that's, again, it's Mark. Recently, I had heard that there was the play for the upcoming season that is under consideration, at least, was It's a Wonderful Life. And I thought, what irony. For those of you who know the story of It's a Wonderful Life, Mark was the modern-day George Bailey, looking out for everybody, self-sacrificing, kind, and taking care of the whole village. We can all reflect on how many things we're going to miss about Mark and how the world will be different because he's no longer in it. I will miss him. But I think everybody who has met Mark or meets somebody takes away with them a little piece of that person. And I think that makes all of us a little bit better. So, Mark, my friend, my colleague, as is my tradition, I leave you with this Irish blessing as you start your journey. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm on your face. And may your God hold you in the hollow of his hand. And now I'd like to introduce Tracy Goyette, another colleague and friend.
I had the honor of being Mark's friend. In the course of our friendship, we talked about many things, including what our obituaries and funerals would be like. A lot of topics. In talking about this, Mark said, "Tracy, regardless of how I actually pass away, you will say that I died saving 3-year-old twins from a house fire." I also encourage you to set aside funds to hire a minimum of 3 to a maximum of 5 very modelly women to attend my funeral and loudly cry, moan, bewail their loss. Before and after the ceremony, they will be heard commenting on how I was their greatest lover. We have had a lot of women crying, but I did not have to pay anybody to do that. In regard to women, in a weird way, Mark actually kind of knew women. I remember a time when we were setting up for an event, and we were out in the hall, just out there, and I came down to help. He slowly just kind of turned his head and looked at me, and he's like, "Tracy, stop what you are doing. Step away from the table." And I stepped away and I looked at him, and he said, "I am leaving that for Sarah. When she gets here and she sees things are unfinished, she won't have time to critique what I'm doing. So we're gonna leave that for her." Mark gave Pat and I some valuable marriage advice. I was complaining about something, and he looked at me very seriously and said, "Did you put it on a list?" I was like, "No." He shook his head at me and said, "Men need lists, Tracy. Precise lists. We want to help you. We do not know how." I admired the kind of father and man that he was. The friendship that Mark had with Pete was one for the books. People often approached me and thought they were brothers. One person actually once approached me and thought they were maybe together. I clarified that no, that was not the case. But they had a great friendship. His love of Mia and Jordan shined in every conversation that we had about them. The biggest joy in his life was raising Tyler. He was so proud of the man that Tyler became. He was overjoyed to finally be able to have conversations with someone on his level. When he talked about Tyler, he just glowed with pride. Months ago, he called me over to his desk, and because he had a secret, he was going to be a grandpa. When he first told me, I tried to remember this other name for Grandpa because he had told me before, and I kind of yelled, I'm like, "Mark, you're gonna be a pappy." And he shook his head at me and said, "No, Tracy, I will be a papa." And I still could be saying it wrong, but he had more pride on his face than I had ever seen. I think he'd been planning for that for a very long time. Mark was an amazing friend. He was a guy you could talk to about anything. He was thoughtful and funny and kind. He had been a steadfast support for me from the time I met him. As has been stated, Mark was a very talented writer. I had the privilege of getting to read some of his work. I would like to leave you with this, written by Mark. It's part of a song that he wrote. It's called From the Other Side. I can see them there looking like the day. Each and every one of them had to go away. I can see them smile and love in their eyes. Not a tear in sight, 'cause over there no one cries. Now I've got to go soon. But remember, when I've died, I'll be watching you with love from the other side. Oh, Sarah. Sorry.
Damn it, Tracy, I was doing really good before that. Really good. My name is Sarah. I've worked with Mark for more than 10 years, sitting next to him for most of that time. I would like to start by saying that Mark and I agreed on almost nothing. Nothing. Politically, socially, what was an acceptable amount of money to spend on lunch, what was the best Beatles album? It is Abbey Road, by the way. Which were the best years of SNL? You get the idea. Mark and I could not have been more different than one another if we tried. Our coworkers would practically make popcorn when we started debating. Despite being polar opposites in nearly every way, I developed a deep affection and admiration for Mark. You can't help it, he just grows on you. And I hate that Mark isn't here today to see all this. He liked to pretend that he didn't like to have a fuss made over him, but we all knew better. Mark secretly likes a fuss. One year, Tracy organized a surprise birthday party for Mark. It wasn't a milestone year. I'm not even sure we knew how old he was turning. Mark liked to appear mysterious and secretive about his age. He was a bit put out when Andy Goodman spent all of 3 minutes on the internet and found his exact age, his hometown, and his birthplace. Mark has a healthy distrust of both the internet and the government. This did not help. I'm not sure what surprised Mark more, the actual party, or just that his family and friends would all willingly gather en masse just for him. Because despite our best efforts, I'm not sure Mark really understood how deeply he was loved by so many of us. He was both humble and frustrating that way. Mark started most of his stories in one of 4 ways. Back when I was a boy, where you would get a story about some hilarious or just seriously screwed up childhood memory. Back when I was in sales, which would follow with some commentary on how good we had it here at work, because nothing was as bad or as difficult as when he was in sales. Back when I managed a men's clothing store, which would follow with observations about how men today were seriously lacking in some way. There was no true gentleman left, no one knows how to dress anymore, and anyone with a man bun should be publicly ridiculed. The last one always told me to buckle up because I was in for a ride. When Mark started with, "So here's the thing," you knew to clear your calendar because a well-thought-out and lengthy monologue was incoming. Mark had a lot of opinions, which is the grossest understatement I have ever made. On days where things were a little slow, Mark would send us emails with his top lists. Top 20 songs every 20-year-old should listen to, greatest country songs of all time, most underrated presidents, most overrated presidents. You get the idea. And because Tracy and I are email hoarders and haven't deleted an email since 2013, apologies to the IT department, there are compilations of Mark's top lists on the back table today, so please take one with you, and if there are not enough copies, we will make you more because this information is just too good not to share. Mark loved to pretend to hate Christmas, but he would gleefully craft these well-thought-out Christmas lists for our reading pleasure every year. He would include things like a Tesla Roadster, a trip in the SpaceX rocket, the Wagoner Ranch for a cool $755 million. Mark liked to talk a big game about how no one could possibly get him anything he wanted for Christmas, which I took as a personal challenge. Some of my favorite Christmas gifts to Mark were a book titled How to Talk to Your Cat About Gun Safety, a Ron Swanson Christmas ornament that says, "Have an adequate Christmas." And my very favorite gift was from this year, an uninspirational desk calendar. He was so tickled by the daily dose of cynicism, he pinned all of his favorites to his bulletin board and would send us weekly emails with that week's demotivational phrases. Some recent favorites. Everything happens for no reason. Positivity is for assholes. While it's really easy to just sit around and criticize people, it's important to remember that it's also really fun. There are plenty of fish in the sea, but none of them want to swim with you. Did it hurt when you fell from heaven when they wouldn't let you in because you're so annoying? And my personal favorite, you are the pineapple on the pizza of life. Mark liked to play the grumpy cynic, but he was a big softie and we all knew it. And nowhere was this more apparent than in his love he had for his family. Tyler, I know this sounds strange. Sorry, I need to get a drink of water. This is my emotional support water bottle. Tyler, I know this sounds so strange because you don't really know most of us, but we know a whole lot about you. Your dad talked about you constantly. You are the most talented, ambitious, smart, witty, most handsome person who has ever lived. Don't know if you know this. Your dad was so incredibly proud of both you and Katerina and the life you have carved out for yourselves, and he was so excited to become a grandpa. I'm pretty sure he made it all of 12 hours before spilling the news. Mark was so proud of his blended, extended family. The friendship between him and Pete are what sitcoms are made of. And Mia and Jordan, in case you didn't know, you are also the most talented, beautiful, charming, witty, worldly, and wise women who have ever graced the planet. He considered you his bonus children, and he bragged about you constantly. I'll leave you all with a final story. Mark used to do this thing that drove me bonkers, which he knew, so he did it more. Every time he made a large purchase, or what he perceived as a large purchase, he would say things like, "Well, just bought my last winter coat." And, "Well, I just had to buy a new microwave. It's probably my last one." And I would get so mad at him and tell him he was far too young to be talking that way. And just because you can wear a winter coat for 15 years does not mean you should. He would just laugh. As some of you know, Mark just bought a new car. He had been talking about it for a while, and he was looking for something that would last. And I told him for sure look into a Honda, since you can drive them for well over 200,000 miles. 2 months ago, when he pulled into the parking lot in his shiny blue Honda CR-V, he told me, "Well, I just bought my last car." And I said, "Okay, I'll give you this one, but only because Hondas last a really long time." Brian.
Hello, everyone. I don't really want to be here right now, but I'm very grateful that I was given this opportunity to speak. It gives me something to focus on, So here we go. I affectionately called Mark my Eeyore. And I miss my Eeyore right now, Mark and I worked together for 8 years in the creative arts department. It was really him and me. And I was thinking back on those years, and I smile knowing the ridiculous things that we were able to accomplish in that time. Mark would begrudgingly embark on these ideas, and he was always willing to make sure that it was done right. He took great pride in doing something the right way. And like when we created a choreographed dance routine music video to John Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. That was for an all-agency in-service. Yeah, Mark thought it was ridiculous, and it was, but he was there in sweatpants and socks and flip-flops at 9 a.m. on a Sunday, ready to help film. And that was the thing. Mark was always there. He was always willing to be there for you. Mark wrote and produced 2 films. And in fact, he put them on YouTube, so you guys can go see them. The first one was Roscommon's Gold. We filmed part of that at my parents' house. And, I'm staying there right now today, and I remember thinking about it. I'm sitting in the living room when we were filming that. And the second was called The Eternal Sunshine Manor, and for those who don't know, it was a movie that had a story, but it was more commonly known as the movie that Bill Slusher's character kissed Pete's daughter, Jordan. Little behind the scenes for you movie buffs, all parties involved wanted that done in one take. I also tricked him into performing live on stage. I would phrase things in ways like he had no choice. And I think he kind of liked being coaxed into things. And I believe his favorite part was guy who pushed Mike McCartan around in a wheelchair in It's a Wonderful Life because he didn't have any lines. Mark taught me a great deal in the time that I knew him, and I keep thinking about these intense conversations about the topics of the day. Sarah, you touched on it. And see, the thing that Mark and I had different philosophies on life, and I think he loved finding people that had different philosophies on life. He loved those conversations. And it was very easy for us to find our differences in our perspectives, but the thing that I found astonishing was the things that we had in common. And it took a long time in those conversations to find that common ground. I think today about what a wonderful gift that was. It doesn't happen so much anymore, but Mark was one of those people where you could have those tough conversations and come out having more respect for the other person that you disagree with. It's a really rare thing. I'm going to touch on something that everybody else has because I think it was a real core of his identity. But Mark was a father. He was a devoted father. And I remember him talking about Tyler getting his driver's license. I know you more than you probably even recognize me. And the big thing he always said, his goal was, I'm going to get that kid graduated without any college debt. And I got a junior myself now in high school. And I remember thinking, I remember Mark, that was his big goal, and that was my big goal too. Because Mark has a good way of making great points. So, his love for Tyler, Mia, and Jordan, I mean, that's where his spark came. That's where my little Eeyore goes away, and this proud Papa Bear shows up. And that was an endless well of pride and joy for him. Anyways, I don't want to be here. You know, I should be at home singing Muppet songs with my daughter. But I am very grateful to be here to celebrate the life of my Eeyore, Mark Hutchinson, with all of you. So thank you very much. Up next is Pete.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before I start, I'd like to thank Deb, because on Tuesday, Tyler and I came in and talked with Deb, and she allowed us to have this. So I greatly appreciate it, Deb. Thank you. And I thank his team, the gang, for putting all this together. So thank you very much. And we all describe him different ways. The best word I came up with to describe Mark was character. One, because he was, and two, because he had a whole lot of it. Okay? If you knew him well, then you know he was quite a character. He had an opinion on everything, and he had no problem telling you. What I think I'll miss the most is his smile. The talks when he was just being Mark. His nickname, which Brian said I coined, and that was Eeyore. Okay? How you doing, Mark? How are you today? Well, it could be better. How was your weekend? It was okay, didn't do anything. And so we just used to call him Eeyore. And when he used to start that, I'd call him Eeyore, and he'd just smile at me. Never knew if he liked it or not, but he thought it was funny. Give me that little smile that I always knew and loved. I first met Mark 25 years ago as Ty's dad. Okay? We periodically talked. You know, he'd pick Tyler up for visitation and stuff like that. And then about 20 years ago, he approached me and he asked me. He said he'd never have any more kids. And, hold on. He said, if Mia could be part of his life. And I looked at him, I said, yes, you'll be Uncle Mark. And he always was. To be quite honest about it, though, he was more than Uncle Mark. He was dad number 2. To quote one of his favorite movies and my favorite movies, I was like, Louis, this could be the start of a beautiful friendship. And it was. Almost every Sunday, Mia would go visit Uncle Mark. They watched old movies and TV shows. His favorites were, and they wrote stories and discussed life events. He taught her the conservative side of the world. We always supported Mia, and many times we did it together. As we got older, her friends would think, are your dads gay? And they'd be like, because they're always together. And Mark, which you knew, his big Seinfeld family, he'd say, we're not gay, but there's nothing wrong with that. And we just laugh. Recently, go off a little, him and I went down to watch Mia's show down at Wayne State. She's in theater down at Wayne State. We went and watched the show. He can drive during the day. I can drive at night because I have really bad vertigo and he has night blindness. So he drove down there, and all the way down there, that's all he did was bitched about everything. And then we finally got down to Wayne State, and he goes, I need to eat. Okay, so we go to a restaurant. I don't want Chinese food. Okay, and it's freezing out. So we go to another place. He didn't want that. He didn't want this. Finally, we ended up at a hamburger joint, and he complained the whole time. And then we went and saw the show, and it was a blast. And then I drove home, and oh no, when we're in the parking lot to pick up Mia and her stuff, he's, if you knew him, and I go, get in the car, and let's go pick up Mia. And he goes, no, and he's doing laps on the outside of my car while I'm talking to him out the window. And he's like, I'm just gonna walk. And I said, okay, but it's really cold tonight. And he just goes, no, go ahead. It was about a block and a half. Okay, so I backed out, I'm pulling out in front of her dorm, and he comes running up, opens the door, cuddles up in the car, and he goes, it's freezing out there. And I just went, what haven't you bitched about today? And then we both cracked up laughing because that was the friendship we had. Well, you brothers, friends, but we weren't gay, okay? Not that there's anything wrong with that. But we were my two dads. And through us being together, and because Mia was the glue with us, we became a family. All the holidays, we were together. Birthdays, forcing him to come over and blow out candles, because and he was always there for all of us, and for my kids, for Tyler, Mia, Jordan, Katerina, Caitlin. It's really tough having them gone. He was a family man. He took care of his mother after his dad died. He took care of his brother and sister in Kentucky, always watched out for him. He was there for our kids, Jordan, Tyler, Mia, and for me. We were a team. He was a caring, giving person, a man of character. I know that my father would have given him the highest accolade. He's a good bloke. That's what my dad would say when somebody was special. Which was a little weird for an Italian guy to say that. But I'm going to miss my friend and my brother. On behalf of Tyler, Katerina, Mia, Jordan, Caitlin, and myself, we'd like to thank all of you for being here and showing the love for Mark that he had for all of us. Thank you. God bless y'all.